Hi YouTube, welcome to my channel. I'm Miss Storian and let's get ready to talk about top 5 badass women you've probably never even heard of. Okay, so coming in at number 5 is Miss Timoclea. In 335 BC, Alexander the Great attacked the Greek city of Thebes. Soldiers rampaged through the streets, ransacking the houses and abusing citizens. Now Timoclea lived in the city at the time and she was set upon by a group of soldiers. The captain of the group was really aggressive and basically raped Timoclea before asking her if she had any hidden wealth. So not only has he taken her body, he's also after her money. So hungry for revenge, Timoclea told the captain she had some treasure hidden deep within her garden. She took him outside and said the treasure was at the bottom of the well. As the captain peered inside, Timoclea, well, can you guess it? Yeah, she pushed him over the edge. And then she finished the job by throwing large stones down just to make sure the captain was dead. The other soldiers dragged Timoclea away from her home and then took her to their leader. But Alexander the Great actually admired Timoclea's courage. Rather than forcing her to be a slave, he essentially gave her freedom. Next at number 4, we've got Sophie Blanchard. Jean-Pierre Blanchard rose to prominence in the late 18th century as a famous aeronaut who was known across Europe for his spectacular balloon shows. But in February 1808, he unfortunately suffered a heart attack during a performance and fell 50 feet. His injuries were so severe that he died a year later. His wife, Sophie Blanchard, took up the mantle instead, and before long she was renowned for her fantastic displays and was known as the most famous balloonist in the world. In truly iconic style, she had a signature move which was the fiery star. Sophie would ascend into the sky and set off a series of fireworks that created a sparkly spectacle of gold, silver, red, blue and green. Even Emperor Napoleon was a big fan and invited her to fly over the Champs de Mars in honour of his marriage to Marie-Louise of Austria. However, on the 6th of July 1819, she ascended into the air above the Tivoli Gardens in Paris. A spark from one of the fireworks caused a fire to erupt. Sophie drifted above the buildings of the Rue de Provence, collided with a rooftop and fell onto the street below. Just like her husband, the fall proved fatal, and for several days France mourned the loss of such a legendary performer. Coming in at number 3, we've got Sonia Goldenhand, whose life is actually still a bit of a mystery. So we know she was born in Warsaw district of the Russian Empire in the middle of the 19th century. Even as a kid, she liked to cause mischief, stealing items from stores and being expelled from school for stealing books. But as an adult, Sonia went next level. She had grown into such a beautiful young woman and she made her way in life by basically charming the pants off the aristocracy of the Russian Empire. She'd pretend to be a really rich member of the upper class and then pickpocket the men she bumped into. She was so beautiful that men often gave them her possessions willingly. Sonia soon became a legend within the criminal underworld of the Russian Empire and her reputation grew massively in the 1880s. She was the only woman to be expected into the Vorokoysky Mir, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, which was the Wild of Thieves. Unfortunately, Sonia couldn't evade justice forever. She was captured in 1895 and sentenced to hard labour. During an escape attempt, she actually collapsed from exhaustion and then died soon after. At number 2, we've got Kutulan, who was a Mongolian warrior princess. She had all the combination of skill and might. She was not only a devastating cavalry woman, but was one of the greatest wrestlers the Mongols had ever seen. She was born in 1260 or thereabouts to a ruler of a swathe of what is now known as Western Mongolia and China, and she helped her father repel repeatedly the invading hordes commanded by the mighty Kublai Khan, who also happened to be her great uncle, so there's clearly some family dramas going on there. Her favourite tactic was to seize an enemy soldier and ride off with him. Off the battlefield and in the wrestling ring, Kutulan went similarly undefeated. She said that she wouldn't marry any man who couldn't beat her in a wrestling match, and those who lost would have to give her their prized horses. So at the end, she ended up with a hell of a lot of horses. By the time she was in her 20s, and basically a spinster by Mongol standards, her parents begged with her to throw a match with one particularly eligible bachelor. History goes that she initially agreed, but once she found herself in the ring, she couldn't break the habit of a lifetime and just surrender. She overpowered her suitor, who was humiliated and ran away. She eventually chose a husband from among her father's men and married him without submitting him to the evidently impossible challenge to out-wrestle her. And the one topping my list is Qing Shi, who was a Chinese pirate. So we don't know much about where Qing actually comes from. We don't know where she was born, when she was born, or if Qing Shi was even her real name. All we do know is that once she burst onto the scene in the 19th century, she would make it a far more badass place. So she first appears in around 1801 when she was a prostitute aboard one of Canton's floating brothels, who carried off to marry pirate commander Cheng Yi. Cheng wasn't accustomed to doing much asking, but his ladylove had certain conditions. She wanted equal share in his blunder and a say in the pirating business. I mean, we have to love that. This husband and wife team was a huge success, but it only lasted 6 years before Cheng Yi was killed in a typhoon. At his death, his wife took over his name. Qingxi means widow of Cheng, and his whole fleet. So she was now the head of one of Asia's biggest pirate crews, right? The Red Flag Fleet. Qingxi revealed herself to be the brains behind the operation. Her strength wasn't really in sailing, so she put the first mate in charge of the ships. We love a delegation. Having first instituted one of the strictest pirate codes ever seen before, and she then devoted herself to finding new ways to get rich on land. She used the usual tactics, right, that pirates love: extortion, blackmail and protection rackets, which all proved healthy sources of income. By 1808, her force had grown so formidable that the Chinese government sent its ships to defeat it. Faced with the Red Flag Fleet's firepower and Qingxi's inspired naval strategizing, the Armada failed, as did those subsequently sent by the British and Portuguese navies. Eventually, China's government had to settle with a truce. Just 9 years after she'd negotiated a prenup with her husband-to-be, Qingxi managed to extract stunningly favourable terms from the empire. So in exchange for kind of disbanding her fleet, she won amnesty for all but a handful of her men, the right for the crew to keep their loot, jobs in the armed forces for any pirate who wanted it, and the title of Lady by Imperial Decree for herself. She retired to Canton to open her own gambling den, then married her second-in-command and died a grandmother at the ripe old age of 69. So this was of 69. Usually when we think of pirates, we undeniably end up thinking of, really fierce men with usually long beards, whose life stories have mesmerised millions of people for several centuries. So we have names like Blackbeard, Sir Francis Drake, those kinds of people. That might ring a bell in the minds of several historians. And those men were considered to be the most successful pirates of all time. However, the most successful pirate lord in recorded history was none of those. It was Qing. Her saga is nothing less than an exhilarating rag-to-riches story. It was a bad girl that turned her illegitimate business into a legitimate one and had the emperor over a barrel. So there you have it. That's 5 women in history that were badass that you've probably never even heard of. Stay tuned for more of these series, and if there's anybody that you'd like me to talk a little bit more about, just hit me up in the comments. Bye!